This book is something I used to read years ago, and I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it. It's called The Christmas Miracle of Jonathan Toomey by Susan Wycliffe P.G. Lynch. This is a sad story, but it's also based on a true story. The village children called him Mr. Gloomy, but in fact his name was Mr. Toomey, Jonathan Toomey. And though it was not kind of the people to call him names, this one fit him quite well. For Jonathan Toomey never smiled. He went about mumbling and grumbling and grapping and grisping. The church bells rang too often, the birds sang shrilly, and the children played loudly. Sounds like he doesn't like his life. Mr. Toomey was a wood carver. Oop, let me do this, sorry. Almost forgot. Mr. Toomey was a wood carver. Some said he was the best wood carver in the valley. He spent his days sitting on the workbench carving beautiful shapes from the blocks and the pine. The hisky chestnut wood from his supper he had sat straight back hold. Things of the fireplace would sit into his beard, his pipe starting into the flames. Jonathan Toomey wasn't an old man, but if you saw him, you might think he was. The way he walked bent forward, with his head down. You would notice his eyes were clear blue, an August sky, and you wouldn't see the dimple on his chin since his face was mostly hidden under his shaggy, untrimmed beard. With the sawdust wood shaving, depending on what the day and time, he had a dry potato with dried gravy. That's funny. The village people didn't know it, but there was a reason he was so gloomy. The reason for his grumbliness, reason why he walked and hunched his back over, he was carrying his great weight on his shoulders. Some years early, when Jonathan Toomey was young and full of life, his wife and baby had become very sick. And because those were the days before hospitals and medications and skilled doctors, his wife and baby died 3 days apart from each other. So Jonathan Toomey has packed his belongings into the wagon, traveled till his tears stopped. He settled into a tiny town at the edge of the village and did his wood carving. Oh, sounds like he lost his family. That's why he's sad. People can hold heavy weight on them. One day in early December, there was a knock at Jonathan's door. Mumbling and grumbling, he went to answer it. There stood a woman and a young boy. "I am the widow McDowell's. I am new in your village. This is my son Thomas," the woman said. "I'm Stephen." "This is my son Thomas," said the woman. "Thomas," the woman said. "I'm Stephen. I know how to whistle," said Thomas. "Whistling and plishing," said the wood carver grumpily. "I need something carved," said the woman. She told Jonathan about everything that her Christmas figurines had been carved by her father, and discovered they were lost as she traveled and got here. "I had hoped that by some miracle I would have found them again." "There are no such things as miracles," said the woodcarver. "Now, could you describe the figures to me?" "There was a sheep," she said, "2 of them, curly and wool." "Yes, 2, said the widow. "And the cow, an angel, Joseph, baby, wise men, 3 of them," added Thomas. "Will you take the job, McDowell?" "I will. I am grateful. How soon can you have them ready?" "They will be ready when they are ready," he said. but I must have them by Christmas. They mean very much to me for Christmas and putting the baby in the basket. Christmas, pish posh, Jonathan gruffled as he shut the door. Sounds like he's not much into Christmas and sad. Eee. The following week, there was a knock at the woodcarver's door. Muffling and sprouting, he went to answer it and stood the widow's McDowell Thomas. Excuse me, said the widow, but Thomas has been begging me to come watch you work. He says he wants to be a woodcarver when he grows up. Would you like to watch? He'd like to watch you since you are the best in the valley. I'll be quiet. You won't even know I'm here. Please, 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 piped. With a grumble, the woodcarver stepped aside. Let them in. He pointed to the stool near the workbench. No talking, no jiggling, no noise, ordered Thomas. The Will McDonald headed Mrs. Thomas a warm loaf of cornbread and taken thank you for letting him watch. Then she took out her knitting and was about to sit into a rocking chair. No one sits there. So she moved straight into the break chair by the fire. Bang door, yeah, exactly. Thomas sat very sad. Once he needed a sneeze, he pressed his finger under his nose. He would hold it back once he wanted desperately to scratch his leg. Keep in his mind of an itch. After a long time, Thomas cleared his throat and whispered, Mr. Tommy, may I ask you a question? The woodcarver growled, Yes. He went on, Is that my sheep you're carving? The woodcarver nodded and gruffled again. After another long time, Thomas whispered, Excuse me, but are you carving you're carving the sheep wrong. The sheep had, oh, this is funny. The sheep had needles, and it was puffy. Pish poff, sheeps are sheeps. They cannot look happy or puffy. Mine did, answered Thomas. After that, Thomas was quiet for the rest of the afternoon. Then the church bells chimed 6 o'clock. Mrs. Thomas decided it was time for her son to go home. Thanked the woodcarver for allowing him to watch. That evening, after supper, the corn and bread, boiled potatoes, sat down on his bench. He picked up a knife and he picked up the sheep and worked on them till his eyelids shut. A few days later, there was a knock at the woodcarver's door. Grimpling and grumbling, he went to answer, and there stood the widow and her son. May I watch again? I will be quiet, said Thomas. He settled himself on the stool very quietly, while his mother laid the basket, swilling and smelling, raisin buns on the table. The teapot was warm. Mr. Tommy said gruffly in his head, went back to work. While Tommy carved, the widow McDowell poured some tea. She touched the woodcarver gently on his shoulder and placed a cup of tea next to him. Thomas tried to eat the bun his mother had given him quietly, but it almost was impossible. When Thomas was finished, he tried to sit quietly. Once he hiccuped, and once he burped. And once, without thinking, he began to swag his leg, and he still fell asleep. His legs fell asleep, yikes. Hi, Danny. After a very long time, Thomas rapped, Mrs. Thomas, excuse me, I ask you a question. Is that my cow you're carving? Nodded a grunt. Another very long time went by. Thomas cleared his throat and said, Mr. Thomas, excuse me, but I must tell you something. That is a beautiful cow. The most beautiful cow I've ever seen, but it's not right. My cow is proud. Pish posh, growled the woodcarver. Cows can't look proud. They cannot look proud at all. My cow did. It knew that Jesus was chosen and it was born for him. Thomas was quite for a rest after that afternoon. Only sounds he heard was the scraping and clumping of the woodcarver carving the wood. When the bells chimed at 6 o'clock, Mr. Tommy muttered under his breath about the nose, and the widow McDowell said it was time to leave. Thomas shook his leg, thanked the woodcarver again for allowing him to watch. That evening, after supper and boiled potatoes and raisins, whatever he had had in his stomach, on the bench, he picked up the carving knife, he picked up the cow, and he worked till his eyelids shut. A few days later, there was a knock-knock at the woodcarver's door. He smoothed down his hair, and he went to answer it. At the door, there was the widow and her son. "May I watch again?" asked Thomas. Mr. McDowell warmed up some tea on a plate and cookies. Thomas watched the woodcarver and figured an angel. After a very long time, Thomas spoke. "Excuse me, is that my angel you're carving?" "Yes, and you do me a favor and tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong." "Well, my angel looked like God was the most important thing." "And just how do I make an angel look important?" said the woodcarver. You'll be able to do it," Thomas said. "You're the best woodcarver in the valley." After another very long time, "Mr. Thomas, can I ask you a question? Do you ever stop talking?" said the woodcarver. "My mother says I don't. She says I learn about virtuality and talking on my own." Well, speak up. What's your question?" "Will you teach me how to carve?" "I am a very busy man," grumbled the woodcarver, but he put down the important angel. "You will carve a bird." "A robin, I hope," said Thomas. "I like robins." With a piece of charcoal and a woodcarver scratched a robin on a piece of paper. He handed Thomas a small block of pine and a knife. He showed him how to loop the corners from the block slowly with the edges of the woods and curves. Thomas copied the woodcarver's strokes and bent his tongue, working from side to side. When the church bells rang 6 o'clock, Jonathan Tommy was holding a hard gritting knife along the edge. He didn't hear the ringing. The widow McDowell said, "It's time to leave." Thomas brushed the wood shavings off his shirt, then reached into his pocket and said thank you, and gave him a beautiful, a beautiful cookie he had made himself. He thanked the woodcarver for teaching him how to carve. Later, he ate some boiled potatoes and had the cookie Tommy had made him. He sketched drawing after drawing after drawing. Finally, he picked his knife up and finished the angel until his eyelids shut. A few days later, knock knock at the woodcarver's door. Mr. Johnson jumped up to answer it. There he stood, the widow McDowell with a bucket of pine and holly springs, dotted berries. She stood, Thomas was clothing. While Mr. Thomas carved, Mrs. McDowell put a bouquet in the jar of water. She scrambled Mr. Tommy's kitchen table and set it up for dinner. Next, I will carve the wise men, Joseph, the woodcarver said Thomas. I begin, you will tell me the mistakes I'm going to make. Well, said Thomas, my wise men were wearing mostly wonderful robes, and they were going to visit Jesus. My Joseph was wearing a baby Jesus like it was protecting him. He looked mighty serious. It wasn't until the church bells had chimed. The widow and her son were preparing to go. Mr. Tommy saw the jar of pine and scrubbed the tablecloth. He found a cloth in the drawer. He thought it would be pretty on the table. Never open that drawer, the woodcarver said harshly. When the two had left, Jonathan put the cloth away, and that evening after supper boiled potatoes. Joseph worked on the wise men till his eyes shut. A few days later, knock knock at the woodcarver's door. He dusted the crumbs off his beard. He brushed the sawdust off his shirt. At the door were the widow and McDowell. All afternoon, Thomas watched the woodcarver work. When it was time to leave, Jonathan, I'm about to begin the last two figurines, Mary and the baby. Can you tell me how the figurines look? They were the most special of all, Thomas. Jesus was smiling, reaching up to his mother. Mary looked like she loved him so much. Thank you, Thomas, said the woodcarver. Tomorrow's Christmas. Is there any chance the figurines will be ready? They will be ready when they're ready. I understand, said the widow. She handed Jonathan two packages. Merry Christmas, she said. Jonathan folded his arms across his chest. I want no presents, he said harshly. That is exactly why we are giving them, answered the widow. She put them down on the table, left them. Jonathan sat down at the table slowly, opened the first package. Inside was a scarf knitted and nice and bright. He tried the scarf on his neck and it fit perfectly. The other package held the robin, cuddly carved and painted, that John had made himself. He dusted the fireplace metal and his sleeve and placed the robin exactly in the center so he could look at it from his chair. The woodcarver did not eat supper that night. Instead, he began sketching figurines of Mary and Jesus. He drew Mary, wrapped and sketched, wrapped and sketched, wrapped and sketched. One more, he crumbled a piece of paper. Sooner or later, there was a small mountain of crumbled piece of papers at the fireplace. He picked up a block of wood. He tried to carve. He could not focus. He huddled and crunked and muttered, "How am I going to do this?" When he heard the church bells announcing the midnight Christmas service, he got up slowly. He opened the drawer beneath the cupboard drawer he had told the widow not to open. From it he took the cloth, the lines out, the valley daisies. He took out a rough wooden shawl, lace handcuff. He took out a tiny white baby blanket and a little pair of blue socks. He placed it each on the table on the floor. In the frame of the charcoal sketch was a woman sitting in the rocking chair, holding a baby. The baby's arms were reaching up, touching the mother's face. The woman was looking down at the baby sitting. Jonathan sat down in the rocking chair and held the picture against his chest. He rocked slowly, his eyes closed. 2 tears trailed into his beard. When he finally took the picture, he to his workbench and began to carve. His fingers worked quickly and slowly and carved through the night. The next day there was a knock on the McDowell's. The next day there was a knock on the door. The widow McDowell's was at the door. When she opened it, there stood the woodcarver, with his neck wrapped in the scarf and the wooden box stuffed with straw. Mr. Tummy said, "What a surprise! Merry Christmas!" "The figurines are ready," he said, and he stepped inside. From the box, Jonathan unpacked a curly sheep, happy because Jesus. He unpacked a proud cow and angel, an important angel with mighty wings sketching out. He also unpacked 3 wise men, which was watching the most wonderful robes on the edge. He unpacked a serious, caring Joseph. He unpacked Mary wearing the wonderful robe and shawl, and a loving baby Jesus reaching for his mother's face. That day, Jonathan went to the Christmas service with the widow McDowell and Thomas. And that day in the Churchville Valley, Jonathan threw back his head, showing his eyes clear. And then August Sky had laughed. No one ever called him Mr. Gloomy again. Well, that is Sarah Ann reading. So I hope you all loved it tonight. I hope you all have a Alright, so this book is called A Very Marley Christmas. And this is by Richard Cowdery and John Gordon. So it's by two people, actually. Christmas was fast approaching. The little house on Churchville Road, Casey and baby Louis wanted everything to be just perfect for the night of Santa's big visit. But something was missing. Snow. Come on, Snow, let's go, Casey said. Let's go. Baby Louie said there's big yellow puppy Marley pushed his giant head between theirs and started yowling to the window. "Ow!" he said. But no flakes came. The snow will come when the snow is ready, Daddy said. Come on, kids, said Mommy. Let's get ready for Santa. Hello, Jen. This is Marley's very first Christmas, and he wanted everything to be ready. He jumped in and helped in every way he could, but Marley, being Marley, always ended up doing something wrong and not right. That afternoon, Daddy brought home a big evergreen tree, but as he dragged it across the lawn to the house, suddenly stopped. It would not drag, it would not slide, it would not budge. Daddy pulled the tree and pulled, yanked harder. The tree would not budge. What the heck, Daddy said. Then he saw the problem. Marley never could pass up a good game of tug-of-war. Bad dog, bad dog, Daddy yelled. Let go. Mommy strung the colored lights for the bushes outside. Finally, she got them just the way she wanted. Perfect, she said. But Marley had other ideas. Bad dog, Marley. Bad dog, Mommy yelled. Casey was inside cutting up paper chains to hang on the window. She was nearly done when Marley came around the corner and spotted Giant Spotty. Uh-oh. I'll save you, Marley seemed to say. With the three big leaps across the room, he attacked Casey's masterpiece. Woof! Grrr! Snap! And it was the end of the paper snowflakes. You big goof, Marley, Casey yelled. Can't you tell a snowflake from a snow snake? A snowflake from a snow snake? That's actually a good one. Baby Louie painted a picture of a snowman for the front door. Hooray, thought Marley. I love to make art. Baby Boo waddled, Louie yelled. Daddy called from the living room. Trees up! Everyone came running. Marley came running too. Mommy, stop! Casey stopped. Baby stopped. Marley did not stop. Oops, no brakes. Uh-oh. Daddy got the tree back up. Sniff, sniff for Marley. Christmas had come early. Finally, my very own indoor bathroom. Waddle wee wee, baby Louie screeched. Casey decorated the tree with ornaments, but the ornaments did not stay on the tree for long. Drop, Marley, Casey said. Daddy opened the tinsel and Marley drove right into the decorations. Mommy hung the stocking above the fireplace for each member of the family. Marley thought it would be more fun to play elephant, and he wiggled his snout inside the stocking and changed blindly through the house. Marley, Casey yelled, take cover! At least everything was just right, everything except for one thing. The most important decoration of all was still missing for Christmas Eve. Fluffy white snow had not arrived. How can Santa land the sleigh without snow? Casey asked. Zoe, 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 Louie scowled into the sky. Daddy kissed Casey. The snow will come when it comes. I've tried, Casey said. Really, I tried. Then Santa won't forget you or the snow. And you won't forget yourselves. She asked. Let's keep fingers crossed, Daddy said. Okie dokie. Santa won't come until everybody's asleep. Casey and Louie prepared the window and looked out one more time to make a wish for the snow. Baby Louie said with a sigh. Hi, Ryan. Hello, Keith. The next morning, Casey Lulu was the first one to awake. They jumped on Mommy and Daddy's bed, begged to go downstairs. Marley was up, scratching and banging his tail against the mattress like the needle. Trump, Trump, please, 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 Casey said. Ruff, ruff, said Marley. Daddy tried to roll over, close his eyes. Let's go see if Santa came. Mama, Marley led the way. In the living room was filled with a bunch of toys and presents in shapes and sizes. He was here, Casey explained. Santa came. What did I tell you, Daddy said. Just then, from the window near the tree, came a giant commotion of half of Marley sinking out and closed into the curtains. Both halfways came tumbling down. Get out of there, you nutty dog, Mommy ordered. What a big guy, a goof. Get out of there, you goof. Doesn't sound like this doggy follows directions. She pulled back the curtains, falling back from the ground, pounding pine, driving down. Oh my goodness, it snowed! It finally snowed! Marley jumped up and down on his hind legs. If he had delivered it himself, your wish is my command, he said. This dog's crazy. Casey threw open the front door. Yes, she shouted. Yippee! Baby Lulu screeched. Just then, the yellow blur specked past. It knocked Baby Lulu smack down, giant diaper. Shot straight out the door. Marley had never felt snow before. Cold on his nose and all over his fur. This was not a good idea. Nope, I guess not. Right? Exactly, Matt. I agree. Marley went into the full skipped flood out of the door. Woo! Down the hill he flipped, hitting his head on a rock. Down front the steps into the deep snow floored. The whole family held their breath. When he finally popped his head up, Marley looked into the giant snow, and he was a fluffy, fluffy puff. What a crazy dog. Marley raced back past Casey and raced past Baby Lulu. He raced past Mommy and Daddy straight into the living room. He jumped onto the new bed and shook his biggest shake. A life of snowflakes everywhere. Even Mommy had to laugh. Santa had brought them the best gift of all. His helper Marley had delivered inside. Baby Lulu shouted, "Good boy, Waddy!" He put snow inside. I'd be mad at the dog for getting mud all over my brand new bed, though. Have a very Marley Christmas. I think I'd be mad at a dog for doing that, you know? I don't know about that. I don't know if I'd be upset or mad at a dog for doing that, right? So, One Winter's Day is the first book. Well, you know, I should start reading about who they're by. One Winter's Day by M. Christina Butler. One Winter's Day. A little hedgehog was making his bed. The winter was sudden. Gusts of wind blew him off his feet. It took hold of his cozy nest, tossed him high in the air. The little hedgehog trembled as the wind whistled around him, and he wondered what to do. He caught a hold of his hat and scarf and mittens before they blew away, and tried to find a shelter under the tree and roots. But wherever and whatever he went, the wind blew them as well. I'll have to stay with the badger until the storm has gone, he said, last pulling his woolly hat flimmy over his pigtails. Then he snuggled into a cozy scarf and put his mittens deep on his set. The wind was even stronger in the meadows. The leaves swirled here and there. The snowflakes filled the air. The little hedgehog hadn't gone far when he bumped into his family, a field of mice shivering in the grass. I've never known such a storm, squeaked the mother mouse. The wind has blown the nest far away. My poor babies are so cold. My home has been blown away as well, said the little hedgehog. I'm on my way to stay with the badger, but I have just the thing to keep you warm. And he took off his woolly hat and gave it to the mice. Aw, so sweet of him. Oh, lovely, they squeaked, snuggling out into the wind. Thank you, little hedgehog. The little hedgehog tucked his nose into the scarf and ran aside, racing. An otter was on the bank, huffing and puffing his paws. Hello, Otter, shouted the little hedgehog. What are you doing? Hello, Hedgehog, replied Otter. My fur coat keeps me warm. I put my paws are freezing. Here, have these, said little Hedgehog, giving the otter his mittens. They should do the trick. Thank you, little Hedgehog, said the otter. These are great, but shouldn't you be at home in this cold weather? I have no home anymore, little Hedgehog said. The wind has blown away, and I'm running, he had cried. I'm going to stay with the badger. Hi, Matt. How you doing, man? By the time the little hedgehog reached the woods, it was snowing and getting deeper on, struggling, picking his way between the snowflakes as the wind howled at him. A mother deer and her fawn were sheltering in the bushes. "Oh, little hedgehog, why aren't you at your nest in this awful storm?" she asked. So little hedgehog told the mother deer about his nest blowing away. But as he spoke, he saw the little fawn was shaking in the cold. "Here, take this," he said, giving the fawn his scarf. "How kind you are," said the mother deer. "Thank you, hedgehog." The little hedgehog pattered faster and faster. But just as he finally saw the badger's house at the bottom of the hill, he skipped into an icy path. "Help!" he cried, and went bumping and bouncing in the snow. The badger was making some tea when he heard the big thud outside. "Whatever was that?" he cried, dropping his toast. When he opened the door, a prickly snowball rolled in. "Gracious me," he said with a surprise, "it's little hedgehog." The badger carried little hedgehog onto the armchair by the fire, gave him some cup of tea. Little hedgehog told the badger about his journey through the storm. And then, cozy and warm, he fell asleep. Little hedgehog stayed with the badger till the storm had gone, as well as walked to hear where his house had been. Little hedgehog was very worried. "How can I build a strong new nest if all the leaves and twigs have been blown away? There's nothing left," he said. "I will help you," said Badger kindly. "We are nearly there now." "Surprise!" came a cry from their turned corner. Little hedgehog gasped with delight. The animals he had met from the storm had made him the coziest nest he had ever seen, for the kindness of the hedgehog in the world of together. Oh, they made him a new home out of everything they had. That's so nice. That's actually the end. They should say the end, but this is a nice book. I actually never read it before, and I saw it at the library, and I thought it was amazing. So this is my first video of Sarah with, actually I'm going to... Alright, let's change it a little bit. I'm sure everybody's heard of this story, Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I cannot believe if nobody has heard of this. Everybody knows it's by Dr. Seuss. I don't even need to see that, but How the Grinch Stole Christmas from Dr. Seuss. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas the whole Christmas season. Oh, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be perhaps that his head was too tight. It could be his... Oh, let me replace it. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, the heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Who's, staring down from his cave with a Grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew. All those Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'll rush for their toys. Then all the noise, noise. If there's one thing I hate, all the noise. Then the Who's, young and old, will sit down to a feast. And they'll feast, and they'll feast, and they'll feast. They'll feast on Who pudding, rare Who roast beast. Oh, roast beast is one thing I can't stand in the least. And then they'll do something I hate most of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, will stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'll stand hand in hand, and those Who's will start singing. Ba-hoo, ba-ray, welcome Christmas, come this way. Ba-hoo, ba-ray, da-hoo, da-ray, welcome Christmas Day. And they'll sing, and they'll sing, and they'll sing. I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I put up with it now. Send me your YouTube. I definitely will, Matt. Yes. Hi, Ryan. How you doing, man? I must stop Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat. I'll make a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat. Oh, he chuckled and gluggled. What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer was scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the Grinch? The Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some black thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded his bags with some old empty sacks and the ramshackle sleigh, and he whistled for Max. I can't whistle. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" And the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. And the windows were dark, quiet in there. All the Who's were all dreaming sweet dreams without care, when he came to the first little house on the square. This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy claused as he climbed to the bong at the bags in his fists. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got only once for a minute or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who's stockings hung all in a row. These stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slugged with a smile most unpleasant. Around the whole room he took every present. Bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, popcorns, pickles, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags, one by one, up the chimney. Then he slugged to the icebox. He took the Who's Feast. He took the Who Pudding. He took the Roast Beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took the last can of Who Hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. As the Grinch grabbed the tree, as he started to shove, he heard the small sound like the coo of a dove. Then he turned around fast and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou Who was no more than 2. She stared at the Grinch and simply said, Santa Claus, why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so thick, he thought up a lie and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, big Santa Claus lied. There's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head and he got her a drink and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who was in bed with her cup, he crept to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. And the one speck of food he left in the house was a crumb, even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. He packed it up with their presents, their ribbons, their wrappings, their tags, their timples, their trimmings and trappings. Anyone remember Jim Carrey? Yes, the Jim Carrey version is awesome, Matt. Yes, I love the Jim Carrey version. Listen, the Jim Carrey, I'm sorry, all the other versions were good, but the Jim Carrey version was awesome. 3,000 feet up the Count of Mount Crumpet, he rode with a load to the tip-top to dump it. All those Who's will wake up. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's the noise the Grinch I simply must hear. He paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear. And he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But this sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded glad. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook what he saw with a shocking surprise. Every who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. Ba-hoo-dore, welcome Christmas, come this way. Ba-hoo-bore, welcome Christmas, Christmas Day. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without bags. It came without packages, boxes, or tags. He puzzled and puzzled till the puzzle was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, he thinks, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with the load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys, he brought back their food, he brought back everything they wanted to use. He brought back Christmas once again. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. All right, I got one more Christmas.